The forest had been wrong long before we noticed the shadows. It began with the light, not darkness exactly, but a thinning of it. Sunlight stretched too far, pale and diluted, as though it had passed through something that drained its certainty. The canopy overhead was impossibly dense, layers of interlocked branches pressing together until the sky became a rumor. What light did reach the ground arrived at strange angles, pooling where it shouldn't, abandoning places that should have been bright. The air felt heavy, damp with cold pockets that slid against our skin as we moved. Sound behaved the same way as light. Footsteps swallowed, breaths shortened, the forest holding everything close. There were no birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed to avoid the deeper paths, leaving the trees frozen in a posture of listening. We walked because stopping felt worse. The trail had narrowed into something more like a memory of passage than a real path. Moss-covered stones in thick, velvet layers. Roots surfaced like ribs, slick and dark. Somewhere ahead, water dripped steadily, but we never reached it. Distance folded in on itself here. Landmarks repeated with subtle differences, as though the forest were revising itself while we moved through it. That was when we noticed our shadows. At first, they lagged behind us, a half step too slow, a fraction darker than they should have been. When we stopped, they hesitated before settling at our feet, stretched long and thin across the soil. We told ourselves it was the light. Then the light shifted again, and the shadows did not. They peeled away from our heels with a soft, tearing sensation we felt more in our chests than our eyes. Not ripping, unsticking, like damp paper pulled from glass. One by one, they straightened, thickened, and took on depth, no longer flat impressions but upright silhouettes, their edges trembling as if adjusting to a new set of rules. They turned away from us. Without sound, without haste, our shadows walked deeper into the woods. We didn't follow immediately. We couldn't. Something in us resisted the motion, a deep instinct screaming that this was not a thing meant to be pursued. The forest seemed to lean inward as they moved, trunks angling just slightly, light bending to accommodate them. Their steps made no noise, but the ground responded all the same, a faint vibration traveling up through our soles. When we finally moved, it was not because we wanted to, but because standing still felt like letting go of something vital. The deeper we went, the stranger the forest became. Shadows detached from other things now too. Branches casting silhouettes that drifted away from their sources. Rocks leaving dark impressions behind like shed skins. Our own shadows grew more defined, more confident, their movements increasingly independent. They began to look back. Not with faces, never that, but with a posture that suggested awareness. Heads tilted, shoulders angled. When we slowed, they slowed. When we hesitated, they stopped, waiting just long enough to remind us they were leading. The forest watched this exchange with quiet interest. We felt it in the way the air pressed close, in the subtle tightening of space between trees. The ground grew softer, more forgiving, as if preparing to receive something. Our reflections in shallow pools behaved incorrectly, moving out of sync, their eyes lifting to track shapes we couldn't see. We realized then that the shadows weren't escaping us. They were being invited. We reached a clearing that should not have existed, a wide, circular depression where the canopy opened just enough to let in a dim, colorless glow. The light here had no clear source, came from everywhere and nowhere, flattening depth, erasing distance. The ground was bare, free of moss or leaf litter, packed smooth by something older than footsteps. Our shadows stepped into the center. They did not stop moving. They folded inward, overlapping, merging, dark on dark, until individual shapes were lost. The light dimmed further, drawn toward that growing mass, and with it went our sense of orientation. Up and down became suggestions. The forest around the clearing receded, trunks blurring into vertical streaks. Something stirred beneath the ground, not emerging, focusing. A presence vast enough that it didn't need a body, only attention. We understood it then as one understands gravity, not through thought but through surrender. The forest was not haunted. It was inhabited. The entity did not speak. It edited. Darkness shifted under its influence, reshaping itself into useful forms. Shadows were not absence here. They were substance, memory, the residue of things that had stood in this light before and been recorded. Our shadows were not leaving us. They were being archived. The merged silhouette in the clearing lifted, elongating, its edges refining into something deliberate. It mimicked our proportions with unsettling accuracy, then improved upon them. Straighter posture, smoother movement, no hesitation. Turned toward us as one. We felt the pull immediately, a hollowing sensation behind the eyes, a lightness in the chest, as if something essential were being gently removed. The forest leaned closer, branches creaking softly now, not in warning, but in anticipation. We backed away. The shape advanced without moving its feet, darkness stretching between moments. The light around us flickered, and suddenly our shadows snapped back into place at our heels. We ran. The forest allowed it, but only barely. Paths opened and closed behind us. Roots shifted underfoot. Cold air surged in pockets that stole our breath. We didn't look back until we reached the edge of the woods, where the canopy thinned and ordinary light waited, pale and reassuring. Only then did we stop. Our shadows lay at our feet again, properly aligned, obedient. Too obedient. They moved when we moved, stopped when we stopped. But they were wrong. Sharper, slightly darker. When we stood still, they swayed faintly, as if breathing. When we turned our heads, they lagged just a fraction of a second behind. That night, by the fire, we noticed something worse. In the flickering light, our shadows leaned toward the trees. And when we slept, we dreamed not of running, but of standing perfectly still, while something else practiced walking in our place. The forest floor cracked open, revealing a staircase leading down. The forest had been quiet for too long. Not the gentle quiet of snowfall or dusk, but a held silence, as if something had interrupted the world mid-breath. No birds crossed the canopy. No insects threaded the air. Even our footsteps felt intrusive, absorbed by the soil before they could echo. The light filtering down through the trees behaved oddly. Too dim for midday, too directionless, casting shadows that overlapped where they shouldn't. The deeper we went, the more the forest seemed to rearrange itself. Trees leaned closer together, their bark scarred with old marks that repeated at irregular intervals, like measurements taken long ago and abandoned. The path beneath our boots narrowed, widened, then vanished altogether, yet we continued forward, guided by nothing but the sensation that stopping would be worse. The air was cool and damp, heavy with the smell of loam and something metallic beneath it. Every so often, cold pockets slid past our ankles, as if the ground itself were exhaling. We noticed the wrongness in small ways at first. A fallen branch that appeared ahead of us twice. A boulder that seemed closer than it should have been, then suddenly farther away. The sound of water dripping somewhere below ground, though no stream appeared on any map we had brought. Then the forest floor cracked open. It happened without warning or violence. No earthquake, no thunder, just a soft, deliberate sound, like knuckles pressing into old wood. The soil beneath our feet split along a clean seam, leaf litter sliding aside as if carefully brushed away. Roots recoiled, pulling themselves back into the earth with a wet, reluctant sound. The ground folded inward. Where solid forest floor had been, a staircase emerged. It was made of stone that did not belong to the forest, smooth, dark, worn concave at the center of each step as if countless feet had passed over it. The staircase descended at a shallow angle, wide enough for two people abreast, vanishing into darkness that swallowed light without reflecting it back. The forest did not react. No wind rushed in. No animals fled. The trees remained perfectly still, angled subtly toward the opening, as though this were not a rupture but a correction. We stood at the edge, staring down. The air rising from below was colder than the forest above, carrying the scent of dust and something faintly familiar. Old paper, perhaps, or stone that had been underground long enough to remember being something else. When we leaned closer, the staircase seemed to stretch, its depth changing depending on how long we looked at it. We told ourselves it was a trick of perspective. That was the last lie that felt comforting. We descended. Each step absorbed sound completely. Our boots made no echo, no scrape, no confirmation of movement beyond the ache in our knees. The walls on either side were not walls at all, but compacted darkness, textured only when our light passed over it, revealing patterns that resembled roots, then veins, then writing we could not quite read. Time loosened. We lost track of how far we had gone. The forest above felt distant, unreal, like a story we half remembered. Occasionally, we thought we heard footsteps behind us, but when we turned, the staircase stretched upward endlessly. The opening above reduced to a pale suggestion. The space at the bottom did not make sense. The staircase ended in a vast chamber that should not have fit beneath the forest. The ceiling arched high overhead, its surface lost in shadow, though we sensed movement there, slow shifts, like something adjusting its posture. The floor was smooth stone, etched with shallow grooves that formed concentric circles around a central depression. The air here was warm, not stifling, but alive, carrying a subtle vibration that resonated in our chests. The sound we had heard above, the distant dripping, was louder now, rhythmic, almost measured. This place was older than the forest. That understanding arrived fully formed, without reasoning. The forest was not the origin. It was a cover, a structure grown around something that needed to remain unseen, its roots and soil shaped over centuries into a careful disguise. We were standing inside what it protected. Memory began to slip. Small things at first, the exact number of steps we had taken, the color of the sky when we entered the woods. Then larger gaps, how long we had known each other, why we had come here at all. The chamber seemed to breathe with us, the grooves in the floor warming beneath our feet, responding to our presence with subtle shifts. The depression at the center deepened. Something stirred within it, not rising, not yet, but focusing, like an eye adjusting to light. We felt attention settle on us, not curious, but assessing, measuring. We understood then that the staircase had not opened for us. It had opened to us. The presence beneath the forest did not speak. It impressed thoughts directly into the space around us, reshaping the chamber in response. Stone rippled faintly, the grooves realigned. The air thickened, heavy with expectation. Above us, we felt the forest move. Not physically, but conceptually. Paths rewriting, trees leaning, the surface rearranging itself to reflect the will below. The forest was not sentient in the way animals are. It was architectural. A living threshold designed to funnel, to filter, to delay. We were late, or early. It was impossible to tell which. The presence pressed closer, and we felt something peel away inside us. Memories loosening, identities softening, like clay prepared for reuse. The chamber wanted us to fit. We fled. The staircase returned, unfolding where it had not been seconds before. We ran upward, breath ragged, legs burning now that sound had returned to us. Behind us, the chamber contracted, stone grinding softly, reluctant to let go. The forest floor sealed as we emerged, soil knitting itself closed with practiced ease. Leaves drifted back into place. Roots settled. The silence returned. We staggered into familiar light, the canopy parting just enough to show sky. The forest looked unchanged, indifferent, ancient. But we were wrong. The path behind us no longer existed. And when we tried to remember where we had been, how deep we had gone, what we had seen, our thoughts slid away, smoothed over, as though something had edited them for clarity. That night, far from the woods, we dreamed of stone steps descending endlessly. In the dreams, the staircase was empty, and something was already climbing up.